Welcome to another episode of the Next Best Thing podcast. I'm your host, Andrea Cline-Thomas. This is a day I have been waiting years for, to be honest. With our guest today is Bozoma Saint John. We know her as a master marketer, a Hall of Fame marketer. She got her start at Spike Lee's advertising agency. She's worked at many different places: Uber, Netflix, Endeavor, you name it, Pepsi. She's been there. She is a self-described badass, and I can say that's confirmed. That's a fact. That's not subjective. And the author of this beautiful book, you can see I've got my little tabs. It's dog-eared. I've got underlines in there. The Urgent Life, my story of love, loss, and survival. Bose, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Andrea. Thank you for having me. Thank you for reading. Thank you for making notes. Thank you for just engaging. I'm so overwhelmed by it, because gosh, how many times do you think that your story is singular, and that maybe other people won't connect to it? I had many of those moments, not sure whether or not you get it, so it feels so good to know that you did. So thank you.
Yeah, 100%. There's so much of your story just over the years that's resonated with me so deeply. And I've looked to you for, you've been like a mentor, my like distant mentor, so that's why I'm just so happy that this day could come. But I always like to start by asking people, this is how we describe you, right? From the outside. How do you describe yourself?
Ooh, how do I describe myself? That's a really tough question, because I think I could probably go to the identifiers, things like I'm a business executive, I'm a mom, I'm a widow, like all those things. But I think if I were to really step back, I'll say I'm a woman. I'm a woman who has contemplated a lot about life, who sometimes feels awkward in the world, and as if the round hole and square peg thing is me. That's how I describe myself. I don't quite fit.
I get that. That's why you're creating your own space. And when I first heard you speak in person, as I said in our DM, was at the ColorCom conference in 2018 in beautiful Maui. And you said, and I remember it like it was yesterday, and you came up and you said, well, I had another speech prepared for today, but I woke up and I listened to Tasha Cobbs Leonard. I'm getting ready. And you said, the whole speech was about like, what are you preparing for, was the title of it. What are you getting ready for? What are you preparing yourself for? And what struck me is when you said, and, talking about how you need to get prepared, but you also said, I even got prepared for my husband to die, and that's what I think that what sat with me, because I was like, I'm sorry, what? Because I didn't know that part of the story there. And it is outlined so beautifully in your book. And I know what I received from it, and I'll share that a little bit later, but I wanted to understand the subtext of where you were in that moment.
Yeah. Oh, well, there were so many complexities in that moment. Isn't that so interesting about life? We think it should be so linear. And sometimes it's funny because, when you watch a movie, and especially if it's like a scary movie or suspense, and you're like, girl, I would have run into the garage. I would have picked up that mallet. I would have never said that to him, and you make up these things in your head about how you would have been or how you would be if in the situation. I, first of all, never contemplated that I would ever be in the situation of a terminal diagnosis of my husband. Never. I never would have contemplated that we would be separated for 3 years and that I would be in a position where he'd be asking me to recommit. And I would be thinking all of the things like, oh God, do I do this? If I do this now, does it mean forever again? It was hard enough to unwind the first time. What would I do if he heals? And am I stuck? It was like all of these things that I was contemplating that I didn't have answers for because I'd never considered that I'd be in that place. But what I was learning in the process was that I did have to get ready. I did have to get ready. I had to get ready for all the scenarios, like you would do at work or any other place where you think like, okay, should I run out of food? What would I do? Right? Or you have a spare tire in your car, right? If you don't know how to change the tire, you're probably contemplating, oh, I should learn how to do that just in case. Mm-hmm. Right? Or like you're going to a park for a festival and you're like, oh, let me pack a drink, some snacks, a blanket. We prepare for these things. And that's what struck me in the moment. It was like I had to prepare for all the scenarios. I had to prepare for his death. I had to prepare if it would come quickly. I had to prepare if it would drag on for a year. I had to prepare for what happened with my daughter afterwards. I had to prepare for my own death. In the event that when he went, I went too. What happened? So all those things were in my mind as I contemplated in that moment. What happens?
Yeah, and that preparation wasn't just the life insurance or who to call. What I loved was what do I want to see? What do I want to do? Do I want gelato? I love that it had the joy part in there as well.
Oh, I'm so glad you said that, because you know what happens in grief, right? Is that we lock away all of the memories. Every memory, you put it away, right? Because the pain is just so oppressive that you can't remember any of the good parts. And so you pack it all away. But for me, the real gift in writing this book was that I was able to pull out that box again of my grief. And when I started unpacking it, I found the stuff that made me happy. Some of the good moments in it. The night that I cooked him lasagna for the very last time. I knew it was the last time. I knew it. And it was so painful, to like be in the kitchen and sweating. I wasn't sure if like what was coming down my face was sweat or tears, but his enjoyment of that plate once he had it, I remember that feeling and how happy I was and how proud I was that I was able to deliver such a good feeling for him. But I had packed all of that away. And so, yeah, some of it is, it's interesting when you start to think about grief that way, that perhaps we've packed away some of the good memories too.
Yeah, because he lived, was it 44 years? And his illness was a small fraction of that. That's so right. There is so much more story to him, you know? But in that ballroom in 2018, because that's when I don't know if that was when you first started talking about living urgently, or if this is what you had been talking about before that. Is that when you were starting internally to start unpacking that?
Yeah, well, I had already begun talking about bringing your full self. This is kind of an evolution of things, right? Because bringing your full self meant that I had to bring myself as a widow, as someone who had lost a boyfriend to suicide, someone who had lost her first child, like all of I had to bring all of that, which was really scary. Mm-hmm. When you're in the corporate space or hell, any space, to bring that up. You feel like a pariah almost. It's like you should be ashamed. You can't talk about that. You can't talk about your tears. People only want to hear happy things. And so I had already begun that practice. And then it was like the further part was, well, you want to know why I am the way I am? You want to know why I'm moving so intentionally in my life? Why I feel like I need to prepare for the next thing while I'm in this thing? Because I went through this grief. So yeah, it's been an evolution. And now I feel like I have crystallized it for myself. But Andrea, I don't pretend as if like there's not more evolution to come. Mm-hmm. I don't know where this journey is going. I don't know what my next epiphany is going to be based on my experiences that I've had, the one I'm in right now, which will prepare me for whatever is to come. I don't know what that is yet.
Yeah. That urgency strikes me because, well, one, you're changing, being ready for that next thing that's been criticized, right? But I feel like it
Yeah.
has to be rooted in what you gave us was an outline of your sense of self, right? That's rooted in your Ghanaian background. My family's Sierra Leonean. So that
Yeah.
whole West Africanness, and understanding that you're never singular. You're always part of
Mm.
a bigger tribe,
Yes.
a family name.
Yeah.
And so I loved you sharing the stories of your family and where you come from, and even how
Yeah.
you were named and how that was against convention. I was like, of course she's going to be like this. I get it. You know what I mean? Like, you had no choice but to be this. Okay.
Right.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
but,
Yeah.
but even how you having that foundation, that West African foundation, and I feel like this in my life too, it
Mm.
comes at it's an affront to how this culture expects us to be,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
that and so when you're going in the workplace, knowing yourself, truly knowing yourself and where you come from,
Mm.
but
Hmm.
then there's this whole other culture of who you're expected to be.
Yeah.
How did you grapple with that?
Yeah. Well, I think there's just there's an expectation of shame when it comes to Black people in this culture, right? We don't articulate it that way, but it is where like the expectation of subservience comes from, or quiet, because you should put your head down, don't ask for too much, try to blend in, don't stand out. All those things are based on the expectation that you are ashamed of who you are, ashamed of your background, because that's what's being sold to us. And I am taking that power back, not just based on being African and African American, also based on all these other identifiers. Like, yes, being a widow, being grief stricken, going to an office and feeling like I can't concentrate because I'm so distraught over what's happening in my life. And I can't talk about those things because who does? Aren't we supposed to be strong? But to me, it's like all of those things, that background in who my parents are, the way they reacted to being in Colorado Springs, Colorado, with four very Ghanaian children that they were raising to be completely authentic in and of themselves, who demanded that people say our names right. How else am I supposed to be?
Mhm.
There's no way I show up without my pride. And the thing is that, like, people also try to criticize you for your pride, right? I've been called every name in the book because of that. People call me arrogant and selfish. I don't know what else. But honestly, I'm like, no, that's just because I'm proud, super proud of who I am. And I refuse to bow my head to anyone based on my racial background, gender, grief, any of that. Yeah.
And it's not just in your words, it's in how you show up. It's your height, it's your clothes, it's
The
everything.
bikinis, Andrea, the bikinis.
The bikinis. It's all the things. And you're
Yeah.
showing your six pack.
Girl,
Like,
I worked
look,
hard for that joint, okay?
you sure
Shit.
did. You sure did.
Okay. Let them know.
But that's where, when I told people I was gonna talk to you today, that's what they said, she's so confident. That's the
Mm,
first thing they said. They like, wow, I love seeing her because she is so confident. How did that
yeah.
come about? Because you didn't automatically go into the world that
Yeah.
way.
Yeah. I think it's I feel like my confidence is like a little bit of revolution, resistance. that some of it did come from nurture, as we've been talking about with my parents who just refused to allow us to assimilate, into a culture that did not want to respect us. Like they definitely, I remember in kindergarten, this is not a story I tell often, but actually I don't even know if I've ever told it, but in kindergarten, I remember we had come to, we were actually in California in Orange County for like a brief moment. And my teacher couldn't say my name. She just kept saying it wrong. And she would say Rosema, instead of Bozoma, for whatever reason. And so that's why I started writing on my drawings, on my paper, Rosema. And then I eventually just shortened it to Rose. It just felt easier. And I remember this like crystal clear. I had to be 5, maybe 6,
Wow.
but probably 5.
Wow.
And I had brought home one of my drawings. I still am. I love to draw. And by the way, my parents like to brag about the fact that they turned in one of my drawings into like the local paper and I won the contest or whatever. And I was like 5. But anyway, and I was so proud of this work that I had done. Like I'd drawn this rose for myself, and I signed it Rose. And I brought it home and I remember my dad saying, "Oh, this is beautiful. Like, this is wonderful. I'm, proud of you. And this rose is, is gorgeous. And you wrote Rose." And I was like, "Yes." He's like, "Well, why didn't you sign your name?" And he actually said it innocently, not thinking that Rose was meant to be me. Then why didn't you sign your name to it? I said, "I did. It's Rose." Oh, man, Andrea, I remember that conversation clearly. It was like the mix of his disappointment and anger, sorrow, fury. Like, I don't know. It was just all his pride, all of it, and looking at me and saying like, this is my mother's name. This is my mother's name. And you have to wear it with pride. Don't let anybody ever make you feel like this is not right or that they can't say it. Make them say your name correctly. Oh man, he walked me to that school the next day and corrected everybody. Okay, exactly. But so my confidence is born out of nature, but also nurture in understanding that I am supposed to be here. And I am supposed to be here exactly as I am. So yeah, I'm on Instagram or in the boardroom or with my girlfriends. Like I'm the same everywhere I am. I think that perhaps also scares people a little bit, because aren't you supposed to be one way, on maybe social media or in the workplace, we code switch, right?
Right.
And so aren't you supposed to be different? And I'm like, no, you're gonna see the same thing. I promise you. If you've ever worked with me, I'm the same in the boardroom as I am in Instagram, as I am like having cocktails. The same person. And that confidence is born out of my deep understanding, bone deep understanding that I am supposed to be here. And I refuse to allow you to make me feel like I'm not.
Does that ever come at a cost?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. There's so many people try to bring me down. And that's not just white men. So I don't even want to pretend that it's just like white men who do that. White women do that. Black men do that. Black women do that. Everybody does that. Because again, we've been set up to believe that we're not supposed to be this confident or this aware of our own power. And I think it scares people. And so it has come at a cost in that people who, will call me names, and don't like me because they'll say, "Oh, she's so full of herself." I'm like, well, who else am I supposed to be full of? Like, I actually don't know what you mean. Actually,
if it's not yourself, then who?
Then who? I'm supposed to be full of you? I'm supposed to be full of this job? I'm supposed to be full of this brand? Oh, come on. You're playing yourself. Like, seriously. Come on. That's ridiculous. And so the cost is that sometimes the intention of my work is misunderstood. because if I'm doing my job passionately, I am doing it because I'm putting myself in the work. So you're going to see me in the work, and you're also going to see me talk about how great it is because I'm proud of the work. And that gets misunderstood as if like I am all about self. I'm about the work. I'm about the job. I'm about the people. I'm about my colleagues. I'm about my community and all of that. But don't get it twisted that I'm not about myself too, for sure.
Yeah. I saw you do an interview a while back, and you were talking about the cuts. Like, no one talks about the cuts of getting to the C-suite, like the cuts along
Yeah,
the way.
yeah.
In the open of this podcast, I talk about how, you've checked the boxes to get to the place, but it's not all that it's cracked up to be. Um,
Ooh.
so this is a little bit of a controversial thing, but considering all the cuts, is
Mm,
it worth it? Is that
mm.
pursuit to get to that place even worth it, considering all the cuts you have to endure along the way?
Yeah, that is a very controversial question. Um,
Because there are all these organizations established for that
yeah,
simple purpose of getting women in the
yeah,
visibility of these spaces. And we understand the need for the visibility to get in that space, but we don't
yeah,
talk about the hell of being there.
yeah, yeah. Well, I'm going to give you a controversial answer,
Okay.
which is that not everybody is supposed to be up there. Not everybody has it. And so these organizations that are built to get us all in there are actually doing us all a disservice. Not all of us are built that way. And I'm not saying that somebody who says, oh, let me go first is better than somebody else. I'm not saying that. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying I'm built different.
Hmm. What's the
You
it
know,
that
that,
you need?
yes, meaning that, like, is it worth it for me to have felt the wounds, to still be dealing with the trauma of these situations I've been in? I don't know. I don't know if it's worth it for me, but it's the only way I know how to be. It's like asking an athlete whether or not like the training that they're in to become the best is worth the knee pain
Hmm.
and the hip replacement and all that stuff in their 40s. And they'll tell you that I had no choice. I had to do it because that's what was in me. I feel the same way. That like my pursuit, my ambition, my desire to get to the next thing and get to the next thing and accomplish this thing and accomplish that thing is simply the way I am. Now, the point that I'm making about it's not for everybody is what I actually want people to consider. Because part of the challenge is that, like, if you are not meant to do that and then you force yourself in, then you will succumb to your injuries. You'll
Hmm.
succumb to the pressures. You'll find yourself in a place where you are not healthy. And then part of my humility, because again, it's like people, when they talk about me being so confident and in a bad way, they also say that I'm not humble enough, which by the way, I always like roll my eyes at because I'm like, well, what is your description of humility?
Hmm.
My definition of humility is that I recognize the sacrifices I'm making that I may not realize in my lifetime.
Hmm.
That I recognize the fact that, yes, I am first in many of these spaces, and I may not get my flowers now. Some other point, somebody will say, oh, but that bows though,
Hmm.
you know? And so my sacrifice is my humility, knowing that I am making a way for other people.
Yeah, 100%. You saying that made me think of when you said some people succumb to it. It gave the words that came to me was succumbing that you used and enduring. And some
Yeah,
people will succumb to the injury, and other
yeah,
people can endure
yeah,
it, which doesn't
yeah,
mean that it does not hurt, but you have the ability to continue
yeah,
on.
to continue
Um,
on. And that's the thing is that, like, there is nothing wrong with that. It's like, look, I ran track in high school and college. Okay. If I had kept up with my training, I might have gone to the Olympics, maybe, but I didn't. And there were girls I ran with who did make it. Folks I ran on the track with who went. Do I think I'm lesser than because of them? No, of course not. But that was their destiny. And so I feel the same way when we talk about these corporate spaces and the career and being first and breaking through the glass ceiling and all that. And I'm just like, it's not might not be for you, sis. And that is okay. But if you have the passion, if you have the ambition, if you cannot sleep at night because you are focused on doing the next thing, then this is for you. But be aware that there are dangers, there is pain, there is trauma. You may have to get some help along the way to help you with all of that. You'll get to the mountaintop, but it's going to cost you.
It's going to cost you. Talking about ambition, I think of ambition as really focusing on the future, but urgency is maximizing this moment, right?
Yeah.
How do the two coexist where you're living urgently, where you're in this moment, but you also have that ambition and you're trying to plant seeds that'll harvest later?
Yeah. Well, I actually don't think they can work without each other. That in order to get to where I want to go to, I have to be great right now. That is where I'm unwilling to compromise because my ambition is large. And so why am I wasting time doing something that is not going to serve me right now? It's not going to get me there. So I might as well not do that thing, which is why when people say, oh, you're unapologetic. Yeah, I am unapologetic because I don't know why I need to apologize for knowing where I'm going and then having to waste my time doing something I don't want to do. I don't want to do that. And so I have no problem being like, this is not working. Gotta go.
There is a part in your book that where you're talking about how like the answer is like you don't have to give some whole answer. It's just I don't want to be here anymore.
I just don't want to be here anymore.
Yeah.
I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to be with you anymore.
Period. The end.
The end. I got nothing else for you. There's nothing else I got to say.
Right. And I can say that I didn't know what a CMO was until Gayle King did an interview with you. Like I had never heard of that position before. That's how you came into my orbit. And I immediately hit the group chat, my family group chat, like there's an African girl. Her name is... Have you heard of her before? This is amazing.
Oh, that's amazing.
But using marketing principles, right? How do you navigate? I want you to explain it within these marketing principles because you are, I didn't know what a CMO did, but I saw that you were the chief marketing officer of your life, right?
Yes.
Like you are expert at that. Using those marketing principles, how are you approaching this season?
Yeah. Well, at the end of the day, really all marketing is, and at the very, very base of it, or maybe at the center of it, is that you're trying to create a reputation for something. Mm-hmm. That's really what you're doing, right? So it's like you're taking a can of soda and creating the reputation that it is healthy for you, or that it's going to give you a pep, or that it's going to make you feel good. So that when you grab it, you know the reputation. Or of a person, right? That's easier to understand. It's like if you are the marketing officer for a political campaign, you're building a reputation for somebody so that when people go to vote, they're like, oh, this person believes in X, Y, and Z thing. You and I, if we were political adversaries, maybe could believe and could have the same values. That's usually actually what it is. It's like the differences are very, very so small. Mm-hmm. But the marketing of the person has created these enormous gulfs between people because you got to pick something and say, okay, this is me. And you build a reputation around that. And so this season of my life is in evolving my reputation. So my reputation till now has been that I am a executive who has conquered these enormous Fortune 50 companies and broken through the C-suite as myself, unapologetically. And now I am entering a season where I might be done with that corporate life. And so I am building a reputation as myself. And the question is, who am I without the title? Now, that's an existential question that sometimes people have a hard time answering.
Yeah.
But as a marketer, I can look at myself objectively and begin to answer that. Now, it's not overnight, just like any great marketing strategy needs time. It needs careful dissection. It needs to understand its, the culture and the temperature. And so that's kind of what I'm doing too. It's just like, okay, who do I want to be now? I'm all these things. It's not as if any of them went away, but now what? How do I create the next evolution of me in a way that's going to serve my greater purpose?
Yeah. And this, I want to continue on that in this segment I call Act Up, ACT, my initials. And I just want to continue on that because I usually ask people, what do you tell other folks who they know that they need a next, whatever their next is in any area. We talk a lot about career, but it's also life. And I think it's all intertwined, as your book really demonstrated. But I want to continue on in that you talking about who are you now? So if somebody's really trying to define themselves, where past guests have really talked about how their job titles have been who they've adopted it as their identity,
Right.
or the company they're working for. That is how they lead in this world, whether it's the barbecue at home or in corporate, America. So as you're identifying yourself, can you take us through some of the questions you're asking yourself at this time?
Yeah. I think one of the major questions, which I think sometimes we're afraid to answer, is like, what do I want? What do I want? Like, for real, though.
Mm-hmm.
And be honest with yourself. And it's not just like the job title or the thing, but it's like, what do I want? Do I want to be powerful? I want to be respected. I want to be wealthy. I want to be inspiring. I want to be envied. Ooh, nobody wants to admit that. It's like, but be honest with yourself, though. I'm not saying you got to go write that in your bio on Instagram.
Right.
Like, you know what I mean? But be honest with yourself. Like, what is it that you want?
Right.
And that's the first question that is the hardest to answer, because we're so used to not being honest with ourselves about what it is we really want. And then when you do that, you're able to then start putting the pieces together of what you're going to do in order to get to that thing. Because let's say you want to be respected in your field.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Who are the people you respect in that field? And what are they doing that makes you respect them? So let's just say that you want to be a podcaster, and you want to be respected in this space, right? You want to be hard-hitting interviews that nobody can mess with. Okay. So then it's like, okay, well, who's doing that in this space? Why are they getting so many listens? Why are they so popular? And when you listen to them, it's like, what is it? Is it that they're funny? Is it that they get big guests? Is it that they are like using incredible like clips and videos? Like, what is it? Like, you got to dissect it. And then once you start to figure that out, you start to understand, like, what do I have that can either do that thing? So you can't pretend. Again, more honesty with self. Again, this is not for everybody else to know, but it's like, got to be honest with yourself. Maybe you're not funny. So don't try to be.
Right. We see that all the time, though, right?
You're not funny. So why are you over here trying to crack jokes like that other person who's getting the 1 million downloads a month?
Yeah.
You're not funny. So don't do that. Maybe they're booking really, really big guests and you're like, oh, how do I do that? Because I don't have access. Well, then that's the job you need to do. Because like, okay, you want to be respected. And one of the ways you see that people are getting respect is because of the guests that they have on their show. So then you need to figure out, who are the 3 people that I can get, that I want to get, who will give me the respect I need so I can get more. And then go get them relentlessly, constantly, unapologetically, without ceasing. Get those people. That's the kind of plan that you need. And so when people ask me like, oh, well, how do I get to the next thing? Or how do I create my brand? Or, how do I plan out my ambition? I'm like, I'm not going to tell you what the plan is because I don't know what your truth is. And you're probably not even telling yourself.
Ooh.
So tell yourself.
It'd be like the Regina Hall, like this.
Right? Oh my God. But why do I know exactly that? So why? Oh my God, I'm gonna cry. I'm gonna show my cousin this because like we laugh about that all the time. With the skit with Kevin Hart. That's so funny. Shout out to Regina Hall. Oh my God, so funny.
So funny. And it's true. It's so true. And I just want to be respectful of your time. So my last thing is just, you put your heart out here. There's a heart on the cover. Yeah. And you really it's just so delicate, and it's so, you guys have to read this book, The Urgent Life. It's just, it's everything. And it's so well done. And your writing it's captivating. It really is. I felt like I was there. I felt like I was a fly on the wall in your life. You let us borrow your eyes. You let us borrow your heart as you navigated all these things. And so thank you for your vulnerability in doing that. Where is your heart now in this journey? Giving this to the world it had to have been scary as hell. But now that it's out there, kind of where is your heart now on this journey?
Oh, yeah. Where is my heart now? Actually funny, just real quick. It was actually hard to choose a cover. It was. I contemplated using a picture. Some of the pictures I put inside of the book. There's one picture in there where Peter and I are holding hands, but you only see our hands. It's like a few days before he died. And at first that was the cover. And then it was like, okay, went with the illustration because I was like, it's too literal. But the illustration wasn't giving what I wanted it to. And you're right. At the end of the day, I was like, look, I'm putting my heart on these pages. That's what I'm doing. That's what it is. And the fluidity with which my heart beats and moves and changes is also part of the movement and the liquid feature, on the cover. And my heart right now is, how do I even describe it? I feel really, really full. I know people use that casually, but I really take it as a triumph. I'm really, really full. I'm finding the things that make me very, very happy, that make me feel fulfilled and satisfied and loved. When I talk about urgency, it's the intention of making sure that I'm living the life I want. And that's what makes my heart full. So it's not a passive thing. It's not like a temporary full. When people say that, oh, this thing happened, my heart is full. It's like, well, is your heart full when you're sleeping? Because my heart is. And that is part of the satisfaction that I have in my life right now, which is why I'm so urgent in telling people to try and figure out how to live their lives this way. Because we shouldn't always just be seeking the next thing. Even if you're seeking romantic love, or even if you're seeking a child, or if you're seeking the next job, or you're seeking the other thing, it's like, are you satisfied in your life right now? And if you're not, that's what I wish for you, that you would be heartful.
Yeah, I love that. Boz, when I first saw you in that Maui ballroom, I had been told that my services would no longer be needed when my contract ended, that I was going to be, let go. And I had months left on my contract, but I felt like, okay, I had gotten to a point that was success in my mind. And it was so brutal. And I just was like, if this is what success requires, then I'm out. I'll find something else. And that's when I met you in the, heard you in that ballroom, was in that moment. And then it was later in 2018, I moved to New York. At that point, I had no intention of moving to New York, but then I moved to New York and I went to the Girl Boss conference, and you were there as well. And so then my heart met you there as well. And it's just like, you've just been such a a great, just a reminder and a reflection of what I could be, and a reflection of
Mm.
how I could think, and a reflection of how I could show up. And
Mm.
it's, you know, and in doing this and in quitting my job and all of these things, you've been a part of that fabric to let me know, even though I did not know what next would look like, but
Mhm.
that next could be possible. And it was just so necessary. So I just
Mm.
wanted to do this for years, and just
Oh.
sincerely thank you for being out loud, you
Mm.
know, for doing this so unapologetically, because you have put fuel in my tank more times than you can imagine. So
Oh,
thank you so much for your time. Thank you for
thank
doing this. I
you.
so appreciate it. So appreciate
Andrea, thank you. Thank you. I know we
it.
said I said that you know, I wasn't sure if I'd get my flowers, but I'm getting flowers, you know, from folks like you who say that. And I'm so grateful for the affirmation, really, and the encouragement. We all need it. And
Yeah.
so I thank you for seeing me, for hearing me, for giving my flowers, for affirmation, encouragement, all of it. Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it.